Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to the Black Banners podcast. Now, this is the very first episode. I want to run down kind of how the podcast is going to work, inshallah. I'll be doing a series on Muslim history, and I'll be dividing into various different playlists with various different themes. And the very first theme is Forgotten Heroes. And the very first Forgotten Hero is Imam Shaman. For the future of this podcast, I would like to incorporate a guest speaker. I hope, because I hope to basically be on call with somebody and record my face and basically talk to them and just record their audio, so just their voice, inshallah. Also, I would like to get a webcam. I do have a webcam right now. I am not going to be using it. It looks terrifying. I mean, my recording looks terrifying. Like when I look at myself, it's a very old webcam, and I look like I'm about to commit a crime. So that's not going to happen. And also, I'd like to upgrade my mic. I do like this mic, but it's not, it's good, but I sound like I'm giving a math lesson on Khan Academy. Hopefully, I'll be upgrading it with a webcam, like getting a webcam with a mic, and then I'll just, bam, I don't even have to deal with that. But I'll be doing, my best with my equipment that I have right now, inshallah. Now, let's get into the first episode. The first episode is about Imam Shaman. Now, Imam Shaman is a forgotten hero because when the Russians eventually conquered the North Caucasus, when they finally broke through, they burned everything. They destroyed anything that represented the resistance against them. And naturally, everything represented the resistance against them because the people of the North Caucasus really hated invaders. And they were famous. They were legendary for fighting off invaders. And one of the most famous invaders were the Mongols, actually. They fought off the Mongols, and they had a lot of success with that. This was also before they accepted Islam. Anyways, let's get into it, inshallah. Imam Shamil was very respected by the Russians. By the way, this was the same Russians that just defeated Napoleon. They had defeated the French Empire, which was insane. It was a massive empire, one of the biggest and most powerful empires in history. And they were now ready to go. They were expanding south, and they were basically competing alongside other European empires who were also expanding. This came during a time of European imperialism and colonialism, and they were expanding into South Asia, etc. And in the case of the Russians, they were expanding southward into Central Asia, and they had to get past the North Caucasus. But they had a nail in their foot, and that was Imam Shaman. Imam Shaman, not just Imam Shaman, by the way. I am not going to put all the, give him all the glory. He was not the only one responsible. I will be mentioning other names, inshallah. But this episode is about Imam Shaman, so, relax. Anyways, Imam Shamil was an absolute beast, and that was because his tactics were different. In my opinion, he was one of the pioneers of modern guerrilla warfare tactics. This man would drop down from windows, he would pop out from forests, he would take out massive number of troops with very little amount of men. And that was because he had to fight differently. He was an excellent athlete as well. And I'll actually share a story about that. As a young man, he wasn't always this beast, by the way. As a young man, he was a very sick boy, and his parents thought that he didn't live up to his name, Ali. So they changed his name to Shamil. Yeah, that's something I really don't like about culture, honestly. That's one of the things that's icky about it. They changed his name. He used to get bullied a lot because he was weak and sick. And back then, when you would get bullied, physically, you wouldn't run to your mommy. You can't run home. That is the ultimate level of disrespect. You are done for if you run home. So naturally, he ran into the forest as a young boy, and he ended up spending an entire week in this forest. A week. That's insane to me. That's amazing. A whole week. And he came out different. He learned how to survive. But not only that, he learned how to ride a horse. He learned how to swing around a horse. This is This is not easy stuff. This is not easy at all. Swinging under the horse, to the side of the horse, etc. He learned how to shoot off the horse. He learned how to climb high places, drop down, land, etc. Basically, parkour. He learned how to do all these things. By the way, do not try that at home. Don't be jumping off things to be like Imam Shaman. You're gonna hurt your kneecaps, man. You're not built like Imam Shaman. Anyways, Imam Shamil came out the forest with a different reputation. He came out as Imam Shamil. He entered as the young boy who used to get pushed around and bullied, and he came out as somebody else. Now, MashaAllah, Allah yarhamu, Imam Shamil started uniting the clans under the banner of Allah, and he started implementing Sharia law into the community. Now, the reason I want to share this is because he wasn't just a beast on the battlefield. He was also an excellent leader, and he was also a fair leader. He implemented Sharia law as an Islamic nation should and has to, obligatory, and he began implementing lashes for drinking. Now, drinking was a very big problem in the North Caucasus, and that was because they were very heavily influenced by the Russians and the Europeans. Mainly the Russians. They were kind of isolated, but they had a lot of interactions with the Russians, and the Russians introduced them to beer and introduced them to other things, such as, music, dancing, etc. Now the people of the North Caucasus, this was like their culture at this point. So it was a little bit of a tough task for Imam Shamil and Ghazi Mullah to switch that around and implement Sharia. And the people, weren't exactly 100% down with it. But eventually they united under the banner of Allah to fight off the Russians. They realized only Allah could help them against the Russians. And they turned back to Allah. May Allah bless them. And yeah, that was when the war first began. They knew they desperately had to begin gathering and working together. And the Russians knew that they desperately had to divide them and break them apart. And that's exactly what they did. And I'm sad to say it worked. And you can still see its effects to this day. Anyways, the war began. Imam Shaman was first involved around 1832. This was in the siege of Gimri. The Russians did a surprise attack on the village of Gimri where Imam Shamil and the rest of the boys were having a meeting. And they wiped everybody in the village except two people. And that was Imam Shamil and his assistant. Now, this story is insane. Listen closely. Imam Shaman was standing in a house with 60 of his dead comrades, and he was looking out the window and he saw 4 Russian soldiers walking down the street. Now, naturally, if I was in Imam Shaman's situation, I would calm down, take a breather, sit out. All my friends are dead in the house with me, all my comrades, including his lifelong friend, Ghazi Mullah, who he started working with as a child. So maybe it's time to take a break and think about the next move. No, this man was on go time. He dropped down, killed 3 of them. The 4th one stabbed him in the chest. He took it out of himself and he cut him down and killed him. And he ended up jumping a stone wall and he disappeared. For 3 years, nobody knew where he was. He was assumed dead by almost everybody, including his comrades. And he was actually in the mountains healing, and he ended up coming back and retaking control. Imam Shamil came back, and for 27 years he fought the Russians. And in those 27 years, he had a lot of very, very interesting encounters, very famous encounters. But one of my favorite was the Battle of Dargo. The massive Russian military, 8,000 to 10,000 men actually, were entering the forest following Imam Shamil in hot pursuit. Imam Shamil entered the Chechen forest in retreat. Basically, the Russians entered behind him. They thought that they were going to enter and completely clobber everything in their path. They thought this is going to be light work, we're going to go in, we're just going to destroy everything. We're 8,000 men. Count Michael entered with them, and they thought that they were going to gain easy victory and catch Imam Shamil and completely end everything. And that's not what happened. As you could probably guess. As they entered, they ended up having the most terrifying month and a half of their lives. They were in the middle of enemy territory. Again, let me clarify that. 8,000 men in the middle of the Chechen forest. And they were getting attacked randomly at random times by horsemen. They were getting ripped into, and they could not do a thing about it. Imagine trying to sleep in that. Like, imagine they were not getting any shut eye. Around 4,800 men, that's the official number of men who were killed in the Battle of Dargo. But according to Count Michael, around 7,000 men were killed. Now, Count Michael was narrowly rescued. Narrowly. Um, Imagine that, Yani. Your commander had to escape and get rescued while his men were completely annihilated in the forest. That's tough. For a month and a half as well, Yani. It wasn't like a 2-day experience of horror. It was an entire month. It was like an ordeal. Subhanallah, may Allah destroy them. Now, Imam Shamil kind of gained a reputation. The Ottomans loved him, and they greeted him as well. When he did go on Hajj at 73 years old, by the way, actually, let me talk about his capture first. Imam Shamil was finally captured after 27 years of fighting. He was finally captured in a siege, and he was allowed to live in exile. Now, actually, let me talk about one of the people that Imam Shaman met, who was Boy Sanger of Manoa. Now, Boy Sanger was an absolute legend. Boy Sanger was a monster. He was honestly, when I think of the word resilient, I think of Boy Sanger. Now, Boy Sanger was an excellent warrior. But at the same time, he had one arm, one eye, and one leg. This man was in a duel with one of the Russian vassals, and he ended up losing an arm and an eye. So, you'd think he would sit out, yani, get benched. But Boy Sanger was that one player on the team that the coach just refused to take out. Nobody had the courage to, yani, force him to give up. In fact, neither did the Russians. The Russians definitely knew and feared Boy Sanger. And he ended up losing his leg as well. He ended up losing his leg to a cannon, and they had to tie him to his horse so that he could actually move around. And that's how he got captured, because he was tied to his horse. How's he going to escape? Anyways, Boy Sanger ended up having to be caught personally and hung. Like, he had to be executed on his own because he vowed to never stop fighting. Even after Imam Shamil was captured, he continued to fight. Anyways, Imam Shaman was captured. He lived in house arrest in Russia, and they ended up eventually allowing him to go on Hajj in Medina. And that's where he died at the age of 73. In 1871, Imam Shamil passed away, Allah yarhamu, and may Allah bless everybody who was involved in the resistance and everybody who was involved in the future of the resistance. After Imam Shamil, there was many other resistances against the Russians in the Caucasus. There was an era of Avadics, who were basically lone wolf warriors who lived in the forest. They couldn't exactly mobilize and create a unit of warriors because the Russians would completely just annihilate it. So they had to fight on their own, one at a time, and basically attack Russians alone. Very interesting. I would do some research about Avadics if I were you. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, guys. But yeah, that's going to tie it up for the very first episode about Imam Shamil and the very first episode of the Black Banners podcast. I hope you have an excellent evening, afternoon, or morning, whatever time it is for you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.